Hello, everyone. I trust you can hear me, you can see me. You never know with this new era of everything digital, right? Are we good? Yay, I am pretending that I hear your answers and voices on this side of the presentation. Thank you so much to all of you for showing up. That is the beginning of the journey, showing up. And today I am delighted to share a little bit more about my own personal journey, but also give you the gift of what I feel it's our superpower, cultural intelligence. What does it mean? What do we do with it? Let's unlock it. So I am super excited to be here. So let's dive right in. And I told you I was going to share a bit of a story, right? So for those of you that don't know me, I am originally from Colombia. And here's the fun part about it. When I came to this country at the age of 17, I came with a suitcase, a student visa, a pocket translator, because I'm that old, and I couldn't speak a word of English. I bet many of you can relate to that story, right? And of all places in America, I ended up in the great state of Texas. Now, talk about a cultural experience, right? So, of course, when you're in the great state of Texas and I am speaking Spanish, what happens when you speak Spanish? You are supposed to be Mexican. And when people said it, I didn't quite get it. If it was like, are they just oblivious to the fact that Colombia also speaks Spanish? Or are they being mean? Or just innocent and naive? Anyway, I took that as my opportunity to say, I'm from Colombia. And of course, what did I get? This is the early 90s. I got Pablo Escobar every time. And I got so annoyed by that. I was like, wait a second, why don't I get Colombian coffee? Everybody knows that reference, right? But I never got it. And I always say, like, the younger Colombians right now have it so much easier because they can call on Shakira and everyone enjoyed her at the Super Bowl. Well, I didn't have Shakira because my Shakira then still had dark hair and was doing pies descalzos. So it is a new era, right? It's really fun to be Latino. But just when I thought I was recovering from my trauma, here comes Netflix with Narcos, and I'm having to explain myself all over again. Cultural understanding, cultural gaps. I'm watching around me, even as a young, college student, all the way fast forward to corporate executive and what I do now. What does this mean? What is the deal with culture and people making assumptions? Sometimes they say it out loud, sometimes they don't. But you know what? We can either crawl to our corners and play victim or own the power in numbers, as Anna was sharing, right? And say, wait a second, you all have a gap. You have a gap. Actually, let me be more exact. You have a cultural gap that I actually understand and can fill if we choose to, right? It's beyond being great cooks, great dancers, and having amazing talent like Shakira and J-Lo at the Super Bowl. Because when you pay attention, there's something quite powerful with culture and the power of culture. So here's a few things that I started kind of looking around. These are mundane little things that maybe we take for granted, but you shouldn't. Because yes, tortillas sell more in America than bread. And that's not because every Mexican has tortillas in their fridge. It's because everybody, all of you, your colleagues of all backgrounds have tortillas in their fridge. There is something that is culturally inspired that has mass market appeal and has this powerful tortilla effect. Now, salsa, guess what? Also outsells ketchup. And then we have all kinds of other reference points. Like here's my, fellow Colombiana, Sofia Vergara, right? I mean, whether you love her or not so much, she has owned her cultural persona. She is who she is proudly. And here's the catch. She is making $42 million talking like this. Highest paid actress in the world because she's owning proudly that identity, right? And we know it. You know the story with Despacito. It never gets old. I mean, we even heard it during the election season. But what's the point with Despacito? Besides the fact that it has broken like every record you can think of in terms of views on YouTube, it's been now officially declared that Latin albums and Latin music is more popular than country music in the United States and EDM. There's something happening with culture, right? 7 billion plus views. Every corner of the world, you hear this song. And of course, we know what happened earlier this year when life felt like so different and normal, right? The Super Bowl had 2 power Latinas, but it broke records as well. It became the most streamed Super Bowl halftime show ever with 65 million views within 48 hours. What does this mean to all of us, to you and I as proud Latinos? That there's something powerful with culture, but guess what? Why am I showing you coconut water right here? You're like, well, those guys don't look Latinos. No, they're not. But Michael Kervin, if you don't know who he is, Jewish boy from New York right here where I'm at, yay, met this Brazilian girl, chased her down to Brazil, and for the first time as an adult, tasted coconut water. Oh, so guess what? It was this guy from New York that discovered coconut water. And he brought it to the United States and launched Vita Coco, which has unraveled the creation of like a $3 billion industry that now everyone is playing in. Why am I telling you this? Because culture, if you have it, but don't do anything with it, may not turn into the cash or the $3 billion market opportunity that it could be. Why is it that any of us who grew up in a coastal town or are from any island, call it Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, you name it, didn't discover coconut water? So every Puerto Rican that is watching, or you Dominicans, I know there's a lot in Massachusetts, we should all be beating our heads up against the coconut tree for not being the ones that discovered coconut water. It was so obvious, we maybe took it for granted and missed on the ability to fill a cultural gap and turn it into cultural equity, cultural valuation, cultural economics. So we need to understand that the power in numbers, and I love that Ana was right behind me, and then you heard Mark Madrid earlier from Elban. We can read all of that and make it academic and exciting, or actually do something with it, like Michael Kervin, who discovered coconut water for us. That is the power of culture. And it's so exciting, you know, because I lived it firsthand. I was a corporate executive before turning business owner and entrepreneur. And at J&J, when I had the privilege of being often that one Latina executive in the meeting, I realized it is my job to be the intrapreneur. What does that mean? Come up with ideas and things that maybe others are not coming up with, and point the flashlight to the corner that they hadn't looked at for growth, for innovation, not because we are the social responsibility project, but because the cultural equity is there to back it up, right? And then who knew that all of this work that I did inside my own corporation, my corporate construct, turned me then into an entrepreneur. But entrepreneurship is a mindset. And what if you turn that mindset and supercharge it or power it up with the power of culture and that equity and advantage that you have? And that's basically what I do for a living these days. A lot of people ask me, what business are you in? I'm in the business of cultural intelligence, bringing data analytics and the roadmaps and execution that makes us win with the power of culture as business leaders, et cetera. And I'm privileged to be able to do this for some of the biggest companies in the world. It started just with two of us, two immigrants, and here we are, proudly still rolling. And we don't have any investors, by the way. But here's the thing. All of that is able, and all of that is possible because there are like 5 undeniable trends. And I'm going to go through these very fast. You heard some of them today, but I always believe as a good marketer, repetition builds retention. And all of us, every single Hispanic business leader or anyone that wants to support the growth and acceleration of our community needs to remember and know these 5 undeniable trends. So let me go through them real quick. Number 1, growth. Any Wall Street analyst is going to tell you, you want to win in the market, you anticipate a trend, jump on it before your competitors, and then accelerate growth. Well, guess what? Simply said, 100% of our population growth is coming from diverse segments, period. So where else are you going to keep investing on a shrinking market? And when you see the portion that is Hispanic, which drives 50% of population growth, come on, the numbers are way too big to ignore. In fact, I will dare all of us to stop calling ourselves a minority. That is a flawed term. That's why I love what the Latino Donor Collaborative is saying. We are the new mainstream economy. So next time you say minority, check yourself. And this is why. Because while we wait for 2040 to be that magical time, roughly, when we'll be a majority minority nation, we already are that. 8 out of 10 largest cities in America today, for the demographic that every business is kind of chasing, right? Women 18 to 49, the prime shoppers, you know, the heads of household that are controlling the purse. Well, 8 of these 10 mega cities that I'm showing you that drive most of the population are already majority minority. So we don't have to wait. The time is now. We just saw it with the elections. I'll sit that with any strategies and show and break the numbers. And there is no way mathematically you could have won Arizona or Nevada without the power of Latinos. The same thing happens with sales. And here's the cool thing about it, right? The buying power is there to back it up. You also just heard it. The GDP contribution, but also our over participation in things like, you know, buying mobile phones, insurance, automobile, department stores, etc., because our purchasing power is growing 70% faster than non-Latinos. So if that is the case, driving all the growth, we are moving the, you know, shopping in America. We are also there to contribute to the talent pipeline, when 82% of the growth in US labor force participation has come from us. Now, a lot of people see this now and say, what does this mean? We always talk about investing in our future, right? The future pipeline, the kids need to do STEM, all these things. Well, let me give you some old news that maybe you didn't have in your, you know, top of mind. We've already hit a majority minority state in public schools across America since 2014. So time to catch up. Now, here's the cool thing about it. We are getting educated. Now, the catch is going to be, let's keep those kids in school. Because when you see that chart on the left-hand side, Hispanic college enrollment rates are higher than Black Americans and non-Hispanic whites. So let's claim that too and be proud of it. I am so proud of the younger Latino generations. We've already seen it this summer, when in a historic first, Latino students are the majority at the University of California's freshman class. That is the face of the new America. So don't let us be called the minority and special niche project. It is the way we stay competitive because there's no other way to grow. Yet, Silicon Valley companies still barely have 5% of professionals in tech that are Latinos. So we have way to go. But once again, let the numbers motivate you. Don't discourage you. And you heard it already, entrepreneurship, we're driving all the growth. But here's the part of it that is kind of a mismatch. Again, back to the Wall Street comment, you jump on a growth trend and then get ahead of it and win. If we are contributing, 86% of all net new businesses are formed by Latinos, yet we barely, and this is combined with our Black colleagues, Black and Latinx founders barely receive 2.6% of VC funding, then we're putting our monies in the segments that are not driving all the growth and therefore setting ourselves up for slower growth as we see the demographics shifting. You get the point, right? And last but not least, all of this is turning us into a very affluent, upwardly mobile segment. Don't let the news or the roles that we're giving on Hollywood define who we are, because when you look at the numbers, those households that have incomes that are 100, 150K plus have increased more than 400% in the last 2 decades or so. So there you have it. We are powerful, right? Good reminder, the 5 things, don't ever forget it, because you and I are in those numbers, which makes it mathematically impossible for any business leader in a corporation, at a bank, in public health, to have its full potential and power of impact without us being part of that formula. Now, that is exactly why has sparked me to kind of realize there's a new market reality. There has to be a new approach. And here we have it, the superpower that you and I hold if we choose to use it. We've heard forever, business school lingo, right? Became really popular in the 80s. EQ is very important for good leaders. Of course, you got to have IQ too. But we got to have cultural intelligence too. Not because it is the diversity mission, but it is because there's no other way to grab your full potential and impact and growth. Here's what cultural intelligence is. It's the ability to be aware of, understand, and apply cultural competence into everyday business. Everyday business, that's the catch. And being aware of, understanding, and applying. Because if I'm aware, and I know I'm the Latina, and I came to this summit, and I heard the numbers, but I don't do anything with them, it's like you drinking coconut water since you grew up, but didn't do anything with it to create Vita Coco. Application is where this rubber meets the road. It's where cultural intelligence becomes a superpower. Why do I have Spider-Man here? Because if you remember the line in the movie, with great power comes great responsibility. I want you all, if you remember one thing from this meeting, is the fact that we do hold this superpower, but with that comes great responsibility. Now I get it. You're probably saying, gee, Lili, I mean, it's easier said than done. I am reminding us of the optimism and growth of who we are. I get we're in the middle of a pandemic, but even in the middle of a pandemic, we need to understand and realize that we got to graduate from this notion of doing multicultural business or multicultural marketing or the specialty thing to realizing that it's about doing business in a multicultural America where we represent 50% of the population growth. Owning that power in numbers transforms the way we show up and carry ourselves. But I get it, COVID happened, right? COVID happened and it changed everything. 3 crises in one: health, economic crisis, racial justice crisis, and here we are in the middle of a pandemic. Let me give you some sobering data on the health side. 51% of hospitalizations related to COVID amongst Hispanics are amongst young people. So whenever the vaccine comes out and it gets distributed, sure, senior citizens, frontline healthcare workers have to get it. But let us not forget that if I'm in a city like New York where 1 in 3 is Hispanic, or in LA where 1 in 2 is Hispanic, I got to have a strategy to get to my younger population in my community, because these is what the numbers say. This came out last week, which is kind of crazy. Let this sink in for a microsecond. Of all of the increase in deaths that we've seen, when you compare, the CDC compare how many people had lost their lives in 2019 versus 2020, and what is that net increase, right, that is attributed to COVID. The largest percentage of deaths, the proportion of deaths that increase, were among Hispanics and young ones, ages 25 to 44. So there needs to be a renewed understanding of what these crises mean also in terms of the numbers. And we heard it already this morning. We are overrepresented as business owners in exactly the industries that have been hit the hardest. And this is true to minorities in general, minority-owned businesses. So the bigger the bubble here in this chart, let me spare you all the rating, basically is the more we participate or are contributing in that sector, and they happen to be the ones greatly affected in the middle of the pandemic. And if we go into lockdowns again, like we're going again in New York City starting this weekend, these Latino restaurant owners, bodega owners, supermarket owners will be hit hard again. Now, we are optimistic, right? Like my husband always makes fun of me. He's like, you guys make a party out of everything. Yes, we do, because we are full of life and love and community and family. But this is what's really hard, using our big data analytics, which scrapes every open digital discussion and looks at patterns in sentiment. We analyze 400,000 Hispanic discussions before COVID, like 12 months before, and then after COVID, as it relates to their outlook towards their personal finances. And look how much more negative we've become. We've lost and shrunk this vision of the American dream that makes us, so beautifully optimistic. So we gotta believe it and reclaim it. And here's what's so powerful. Even in the middle of a pandemic, when many of our businesses are being compromised, when our industries are being shut down, when you're having to let go your employees, I had to furlough people. Thankfully, eventually we were able to hire them back, but I didn't get the PPP on the first round. It was the most stressful thing. I called some of the people that I know are in this call, because that's what you have to do. But even in the middle of that, look what we do. What is this chart telling me? It's telling me that even if I'm struggling, this is for minority-owned businesses, Black, Latino, etc., we still step in and add new services or contribute or give back to support our communities. So the little we have is the much that we give. We're still optimistic and altruistic, even in the middle of a crisis. And this speaks of our resilience, right? We've had to reinvent ourselves. I have 2 little kids. It's been fun to learn how to do haircuts and homeworks and fill out the freaking PPP that I didn't get the first time around. But you know what's interesting? Nuestra gente, nuestra comunidad shows up in ways that are beautiful. I'm sure you've seen many of the stories. Do you know what that is? That is una bolsa de paletas. That's a paletero actually helping both. You see the people selling as well as giving. we're in the middle of a protest here, have some paleta de coco and keep going. That's what our people do. And one of the most powerful pictures I have seen, those that are keeping you and I literally alive, the farm workers, which are majority Latinos, many of them undocumented, it doesn't matter how much fiery smoke you have in the background, they're still showing up at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. to pick up your food and my food. Our people are resilient. Our spirit is special, is beautiful. And when it's augmented with our power and numbers and we believe it, it does make us like a superhero. Hence the reason for cultural intelligence. Now, as you're navigating through a lot, because again, I'm an optimist, but I've gone through a lot too in these last 8 months. I want to leave you with a call to action, right? Not just Spider-Man, there's a few Wonder Women too in this call, right? So that we act on this notion of cultural intelligence, but redefine a little bit what that means for us in recognizing that there is an opportunity, if we pay attention and do the work, to turn these cultural trends and this cultural equity into profits. Unapologetically, it's okay. Call it purposeful profits. Do well by doing good to the community. And that will keep us complete. That will keep us powerful. Here's a few takeaways, right? As you go off and say, okay, this was an interesting talk. What do I do now, Lili? What do I do? It starts by knowing your numbers. And it's not like all of a sudden you got to do this keynote with the 5 trends, but knowing the numbers in terms of you, your business, what you need, what you lack, where the holes are. I bet you many of us Hispanic business owners had to shake up and realize, shoot, I'm not ready to file my paperwork for the PPP because my payroll data is all over the place in a random Excel spreadsheet. Well, time to know our numbers internally as businesses and what it means to the market I serve. Costs, needs, opportunities, markets. Second thing, we gotta dare to ask, yo no sé qué es, vergüenza, cultura, lo que sea, lo que nos enseñó la abuelita. Somehow we are like hesitant to ask for help. Remember this, there is power in vulnerability. I don't know if Mark Madrid is still on, but I called him almost crying in March because that's what you do. This is not time to pretend. Ask for time, talent, or treasure. Those are the 3 things typically that you can ask for. Because guess what? Not asking, porque me da vergüenza or whatever que van a decir, not asking is already getting a no for an answer, and that's not trying, which to me is already a failure. Dare to ask. In the last 8 months, I have signed 3 strategic partnership agreements with entities that I wouldn't have talked to in any other circumstance. Who are you talking to? Who are you cutting deals with, teaming up with? There's power when you ask. So right now, text somebody you haven't talked to in a year that you know is important or influential so that they can give you a hand. Just catch up, ask for 10 minutes, don't ask for an hour. And the other one is keep on giving, right? The reason for living is giving. The little we have or the much that you have, there's never any amount of money that will give you the satisfaction of giving and making a difference and living the world a little bit better than when you came in. Please stay committed to that. You are more blessed than someone else around. And last but not least, actually, I think this is the one before the last, we have to activate and digitize. So you may have all these ideas. I mean, sometimes crisis creates opportunity and we're like, oh my gosh, I wish I launched this and this. Well, do it. The pursuit of perfection sometimes is the enemy of execution. So just go for it. Call a few people, see where you can get started. This is the time to test and do. Forget about the test and learn. It's the test and do. And we have to make digital work for us. This has been one of the hardest lessons, by the way, for all industries to figure out. And the last one, let us not remember, for those of you that are of faith, that with trials, we get sharpened, gold is refined through fire. So remember that sometimes we need a breakdown to have a breakthrough. Reimagining the ways, the places, the spaces, the people that we do business with, so that we can thrive and stay resilient and continue to own our power in numbers. Because the numbers are not changing, by the way. Wall or no wall, immigration reform or not, don't let all that stuff distract you. That's politicking rhetoric. The demographics, the economics are there, no matter who's sitting in DC. And it has been there for decades. if we pay attention. So we got to rise above that and realize that there is cultural ROI that is embedded within us. But this is not the type of ROI I just know from my business class, return on investment. Not doing anything or not acting on your cultural intelligence turns this into return on ignored. And that's the last thing you want, because we want to have that tortilla effect, right? We want to be the ones that show up in the meeting to expose an area of growth nobody had talked about. And as we look into the future of our nation, what it means to recover, I will stand in front of any chief economist of anywhere and try to have him or her prove me any other way. Our recovery as a nation depends on the models, policies, and processes for us to make it an inclusive recovery, because we cannot leave behind the segments that are driving all the growth. It's not a favor. It's not a social project. It's about staying competitive as a nation. And with that, now you have it. Cultural intelligence is within you. How much you execute it is up to you and I. How much you ask, how much you do the work, how much you're able to embody your inner Spider-Man or Spider-Woman or Wonder Woman, it's up to you. But leverage the power of community, the 100+ people in this session, the PowerUp, community, etc., so that you can keep powering up not just your businesses, but also your impact and your cultural intelligence. So thank you so much for having me here. I am delighted. I wish we were together, but I'm sending you all a virtual hug, and go on. Don't let the dream die, because we're way too big for that to be the case. Thank you.